evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's candidate forum. Thank you very much for coming tonight. Thank you to the candidates for coming to express your views to your voters. My name is Gisela Meyer, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Central Orange County area. Assisting me is Brenda Davis, timekeeper, up here in front, and Sue Guilford, question sorter. Sue, you want to? Okay, if you would like to submit a question, please get a card from Sue. We will only be accepting questions on these yellow cards. The League of Women Voters is a political organization, but the League never supports or opposes candidates for elective office. In order to maintain the neutrality of the forum location, campaign literature is not permitted inside this room. Campaign material may be distributed after the forum outside the meeting room. The speaking order of the candidates has been determined by drawing lots. We will begin this forum by giving each candidate an opportunity to make a 2-minute opening statement. The timekeeper will show a yellow card when you have 15 seconds left. Well, we're having to improvise a little bit. But she will show you a card when you have 15 seconds left and a stop card when your time is up. You'll be allowed to finish your sentence, but please observe the time limit. Only questions that have been written by the audience members on the yellow cards will be accepted. Our question sorter, who's also Sue Guilford, will screen the questions to avoid duplication and to eliminate personal attacks. Questions may be addressed to one candidate, but all of the other candidates will be given an opportunity to respond as well. Candidates will be given 1 minute to respond to questions. At the end of the forum, the candidates will be given 1 minute for closing statements. Members of the audience, we ask that you turn off all cell phones and other electronic devices. Candidates, you have also agreed not to use cell phones during the forum. Please hold your applause until the end of the forum so that we'll have more time to ask the candidates questions. Okay, so we will now begin the forum by giving each of the candidates 2 minutes for an opening statement, and we will begin with Mr. Dean Gross.
Good evening. My name is Dean Gross. I'm a resident of Los Alamitos. I've lived here since 1986. I've been honored to serve in the council once before, and I'm finishing up, in reality, my first 4-year term. I appreciate the opportunity to work for the citizens and the businesses of Los Alamitos. I believe that the local arena is where the most important work can be done, where people can reach out and actually talk to and engage with their elected officials, and it's a distinct honor for me to be able to do that. I'm married. My wife is a nurse practitioner, works in private practice in the city of Cypress. Between us, we have 5 grown children. One of them passed away. We have 5 grown children, 6 grandchildren, and I think 3 or 4 great-grandchildren. They just come along and you enjoy them as they go. I've been in business in Los Alamitos since 1986. The business started in 1979, and the business closed in December of 2014. I'm currently doing consulting work. I still maintain a business facility in the city, but I'm not really conducting any actual business. Member of the Rotary Club, have served a number of leadership positions with the Rotary Club, belong to the Chamber of Commerce and sit on their board. I'm involved in a lot of the nonprofits in the city, and I'm glad that the people have an opportunity tonight to hear from all 3 of the candidates. I'd like to thank the women voters for putting this conference or putting this forum on, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy?
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Myers, and the League for coming here tonight and putting this on. 4 years ago, I stood before you as a new independent candidate. I promised to finance my own campaign so that there would be no doubt about my independence, and I'm proud to say I fulfilled that promise, and will make the same promise again in 2016. In my 4 years on the council, I used my CPA and business experience to be a financial watchdog. I never forgot that I'm an elected steward of your money, and I'm proud for the trust you place in me. During my 4-year term, by better use of the surplus, we have raised our credit rating to AAA, began an annual department-by-department review of all income and expenses, and most importantly, balanced the budget despite rising pension costs. I'm proud that I served 3 years on the Budget Committee, and during that time we have put in place an orderly budget process. While time-consuming, it allows for a thorough and thoughtful analysis of our current situation. We used to try and cram this into about 2 meetings. Now we start in early February, take one night to look at every department within the city, and by the time we get down to the process, we've had a long discussion, thoughtful discussion. Most importantly, I promise to bring cooperation back to the City Council. And I think the current council is operating smoothly, and with my colleagues' help, all discussions are done in a respectful and professional manner. Some of the more activists in the community claim we've made the meetings boring, which I take as a badge of honor. I'm honored that my fellow council members have appointed me mayor 2 consecutive years. I believe it was the first time that's happened in over 20 years. There's still much to do. I hope we'll get into that tonight about the new buildings and things like that within the city. I seek your vote because it's important that we have a strong independent voice to represent us all. Thank you.
Thank you. And our third candidate is Josh Wilson.
Hi, my name is Josh Wilson. I'm a local dad in Los Alamitos. We live next to the high school. I'll give you a little background about myself. Currently, I work at Southland Credit Union. I'm one of the managing directors over there to help with the credit union's strategic plan. And my wife and I also are co-owners of the local business, Simply O Organic Juice Bar in Los Alamitos. My background has been mostly based in finance. I have past experiences in banking, and I have my financial licenses or past financial licenses as brokers. I'm currently licensed for insurance, and I've also worked for the state government for the California State Assemblyman. And through that, I've seen that on the city level and the local level, we can actually do very good things. So for myself, I have volunteered a lot in the community since I've been in Los Al. I have currently serving on the Los Alamitos Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Arts Commission, where I was appointed chair. I was last year's chairman for the Chamber of Commerce. I serve on the board for the Casa Youth Shelter. I also guest speaker at the Los Alamitos, the Youth Center for the Leadership Academy, and I'm also an Eagle Scout. And all of those things are fantastic, and they really speak to what I'm hoping to bring to City Council and like to bring to City Council. It's a fresh, young family perspective. My family is very young. I am very much looking forward to being part of this community for many years to come, and bringing that new perspective with a finance background, being good stewards of your money, that is what I hope to accomplish, and that's what I'm excited to speak with today. So thank you much.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now begin with the questions, and the first question will go to Mr. Murphy. What are the 3 most impactful city issues that need to be addressed during your tenure?
I think the first one will be the building right next door, the potential building with Lincoln Properties, and as they develop that, we're going to have the City of Cypress is proposing a plan that while it's in the City of Cypress, it definitely will affect us. And the overall traffic in the city continues to get worse, and we're going to need to address that too. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
I would agree with Mr. Murphy as well. I think the City Hall is going to be a very big issue for the city. It's probably one of my top priorities. I feel that there's some on the council that have advocated to moving it to the Joint Forces Training Base, which I personally feel is fiscally irresponsible for our city to do. I hopefully look forward to expanding more upon that. To touch on the other issue is the Cypress development as well. We have a very large item on the ballot for Cypress residents that would add thousands of homes, thousands of residents just down the street from our neighborhood. And our city council had forum on Monday night to make a position on that. They declined to do so. I am against any high density housing that would be put in our adjacent neighborhood, and I'd work against it as well. And last part is public safety. I think that is going to be a big issue to tackle as well. Our officers need a lot more support. There are some items that we can move on, and look forward to expanding on public safety as a third option.
Thank you. And Mr. Gross.
Thank you. Our State of the City that was conducted earlier this year, the theme of that was the future's bright in Los Alamitos. There are a number of exciting things that have been put in place that are going to make the future of Los Alamitos much brighter than we've experienced in the past. We're finally seeing some development coming along. There are challenges ahead. I was pleased to hear the other night that the mayor's going to put a 6-lane road into the high school. But the community itself is a good community. We have good residents. We want to continue to maintain the quality of life. We want to continue to maintain a balanced budget. We want to continue to maintain the police services and the public safety programs available to the residents in the city. And I'm hoping to be a part of that growth.
Okay, thank you. All right, for this next question, we will start with Mr. Wilson. And you've touched on this a little bit already, but I guess you can talk about it some more. Where do you see our civic center should be relocated, and how do we pay for it?
It's a great question. So let's start with the civic center and the idea that's been floated past about the Joint Forces Training Base, because a lot of time has been spent on the staff's time to talk about that option. So as it stands right now, Lincoln Properties is the next door. They want to purchase that land. They're going to put some great buildings in there, generate some sales tax revenue. And the question comes down to, what are we going to do with the 3.5 acres that are currently sitting here, including the community center, including the youth center? And what are we going to do with them? So they're going to offer about fair market value for the land, as any company would. And in turn, if we were to go to the Joint Forces Training Base, we would have to lease the land, pay fair market value for that land, and eventually pay to build that building, along with the lease. And if we're going to pay for 10 acres that's been exposed on there, that's $20 million. Plus we have to pay to have build a building, and that's probably upwards of $30 million. And then in turn for this 2.5 or 3.5 acres we're going to get here, we're probably going to get about 6 or 8 million. It'd be akin to selling.
Thank you. That's the end of your time.
I want to finish this point.
Just finish the sentence,
okay,
please.
It'd be akin to advocating to selling your house that you own outright and to going and leasing land and paying somebody to build on their land for their property. At the turn, they can take it back from us at that lease.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gross?
Thank you. This has been a project that I've been vocalizing and working toward for probably the last several years especially. The city has identified 13 different locations, some of which are no longer available, where City Hall might relocate. The only site that makes sense from the standpoint of the entire campus is the Joint Forces Training Base. That land has already been bought and paid for by the citizens. It's not, it's public land, and it's owned by the Army Corps of Engineers. The California National Guard serves as the landlord. We've managed to get the consensus of the California National Guard from Sacramento that believe that effort is worthwhile. We're not to the point at this stage where we're going to be able to make that decision, but we're working in that direction. This is not a project that's going to happen overnight, and I'm happy to speak with any of the voters regarding that program.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy?
Thank you. Contrary to, I think, public rumor, we are not set on the base. We're looking at several sites. We just hired consultants to look at many possibilities, including staying where we are. The cheapest way to go may be to stay here and refurbish these properties. Personally, my favorite is the property we're on right here. I believe that we could sell the couple acres or up where City Hall is right now and build a larger building on this property, maybe a 4-story building. That way we don't have to rebuy the land, and Josh had already explained the problems that brings about financially. And perhaps we would almost be able to break even by selling the property on Catella and building back here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next question. We'll start with Mr. Gross. Cypress is making future plans for the racetrack property. What plan is the city making to get some of the increased sales tax to compensate us for the increased congestion and deteriorating quality of air and infrastructure?
Well, we have to take one step at a time. And the first step is going to be the voters of Cypress who will make a determination on the land and zoning that exists over there. The second step in that, if that measure passes, would be the owners of the racetrack, the 170 or 140 acres, making a determination of what they're going to do in the process of selling it. Years ago, when development started on the racetrack and what's referred to as the LART site, Los Alamitos Racetrack site, a program was put in place that was providing mitigation to the city of Los Alamitos at $1 a square foot of any construction. That agreement has since expired, and a similar agreement needs to be put into place and to help benefit in that process. Time is running out on me, so.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy?
Yes, local GG, as it's called. This project, I think I described as Armageddon in the newspaper this morning. It's going to have very strong effects on us. I'm going to answer your question as if you're assuming it's going to pass. If it doesn't pass, it's not going to matter. If it does pass, the important thing is we're going to have a seat at the table to get our share, to get reimbursed for these costs. So that's number one, that we will be in constant communication. You know, we're going to have our chances to discuss the project, fight the project as we see fit. There are several projects over there that have density problems and other issues that are very important to our citizens, and I think that's going to be our number one thing going forward, is to be watching that, because it's not within our purview, but it sure affects us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
Taking the assumption that it does pass by the voters, and the process is going to take a piecemealed approach. It's not as the developer and the owner is presenting, where it's going to be one large project that's all going to be processed at the same time. This is going to be something that's had to be done for the future, that future councils, future families, even after the racetrack concludes 10 to 15 years, that are going to have to worry this and manage this and look to long term and how to do this. So in terms of actually extracting tax revenue and sales tax revenue from this, it's going to be involved when they have the EIR process, all the other processes that are going to go forward to bring the community stakeholders. Los Alamitos is need to refer back and see what is our strategic plan in terms of density housing of our surrounding neighborhoods and community partners, and making sure that we have a consistent voice. And once we establish that pattern, we'll be able to move forward with additional items as those piecemeal approaches come through.
Thank you. All right, our next question will start with Mr. Murphy. What do you think about red light cameras?
Okay, red light cameras to me are a safety issue. You know, we're one of 2 cities that have red light cameras in Orange County. So when you're in that much of a minority, you go out of your way to make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. When the prior police chief Mattern was here, I spoke with him when I became a councilman, and again as he was leaving, to make sure that we are doing the best we can over there as a safety matter. He felt that it is a safety issue that we need, and he is our expert. When the new chief came in, I gave him the task of giving us a report also on the same thing. Do you feel that the red lights are necessary? He came back and pointed out that the red lights are more than necessary, because even if we put an officer at our most busiest intersection, even if there's a violation, he can't get out to ticket that person because of the cross traffic. He can't get across that intersection on a regular basis. So it's a safety issue, and I've been told to stop.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilson?
For the red light cameras, I'm personally very opposed to them, and there's multiple reasons why, and specifically for this city contract that was renewed. But in the safety aspect, after talking to police officers, there is definitely a need and safety approach. I'd like to see more statistics, as also they appear to around the region, but it's true, we are one of the only 2 cities within the county that have red light cameras. Now, if you go up this street in Long Beach, in Los Angeles County, They're not enforcing red light tickets, and then they tell you actively to disregard the ticket because the judges won't do it. So we have a problem with jurisdictions here where our county enforces it, county up the way does not. And you have a product that Red Flex, which is the contract habiter, is having a decline of people that are going to go for it. We currently pay more than $20,000 a year per pound. Sorry, if you look at Garden Grove, the point I was trying to say, we're paying more per approach for those cameras than we have in Los Alamitos.
Your time is
I
up.
think we can save most. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, Mr. Gross?
Thank you. Red light cameras are a difficult and emotional thing to be discussing, because if you happen to be the one caught inching through, you get the ticket. Currently, the ticket costs about $600. It seems like many people believe we're getting rich off of the $600 ticket, and in reality, we get less than $150 into the city treasury for that ticket. There is a cost involved with having the cameras. I agree there is a safety factor. We are, again, one of the last cities in Orange County being able to have the cameras. We approved a new agreement last year, which is a year-by-year agreement. We'll continue to monitor it as we go along. I'm for the safety of the drivers. A lot of the concerns that people have voiced about the red light cameras being rear-ended, things of that nature, simply hasn't been happening here in Los Al. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, for this next question, we'll start with Mr. Wilson. If the Joint Forces Training Base should become, I'm not sure what this is, BRAC?
BRAC.
BRAC? Okay. What is your vision for the best use of this property?
If it were to come to case, and I hope it was not, I think the JFTB is a great economic driver for community and good for national defense. But if it were to be BRAC, which is basically closure, I'd like to see the city have a strong strategic plan that would include, one, a regional park in the area. We are severely lacking on park space. Places for our families to go, and for essentially even just quality of life. That would be the first thing on my mind. But I wouldn't do so much as how the Great Park is in Irvine, where you have a rampant buildup of corruption of basically city staff that has expended over millions and millions of dollars in consultant fees. We would go there with a sensible approach. We'd also develop our commercial sector with retail, and then we would have sensible residential buildings so that we can mitigate traffic as a whole.
Thank you. Mr. Gross?
Thank you. The Joint Forces Training Base is a huge economic engine for Los Alamitos. It's 1,400 acres, contains the last remaining military airfield in Los Angeles and Orange County, critical to military missions, very critical for Homeland Security missions that could occur. In my belief and my studies, and I've chaired the Regional Military Affairs Committee at Joint Forces Training Base since 2003, that property will not be BRAC'd. You never say never, and the potential exists. There have been some studies that were done. When we did the general plan, the base was included as part of our 2035 general plan. We would be in the same boat as the Los Alamitos racetrack at this point with the potential for development. It's a long way off. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy?
If the base is closed, that really is going to be our opportunity for a park. I mean, there's federal land that we've already paid for. I'd like to see as much park space that we can get out of that. Any development on the edges, suitable development would be okay, but primarily I see that as our chance to have a park in this area.
Thank you. Okay, this next question, we'll start with Mr. Gross. What are your thoughts on how to use a budget surplus?
Currently, we don't have a budget surplus of any extent. We went through 2 years ago and developed policies on the reserves that the city had, allocated money for emergency purposes. We set a threshold of 25% of our annual budget to be set aside in case of an emergency. prudent planning from the standpoint of the city leaders. We recently changed our insurance carrier, and we are now, for lack of a better word, self-insured. We have money set aside out of our reserve specifically for that purpose. Probably the biggest elephant in the room, as the mayor might say, is the public employee retirement system, and decisions that have been made by the PERS system over the years has not developed the amount of revenue, and they keep increasing the costs that the cities and public agencies have to pay for. We have to be prudent in what we're doing.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy?
Okay, I want to disagree with my colleague, but I think it's more about semantics. We do have a surplus of $7.8 million, but as Dean pointed out, it is grouped into various uses, and mostly pension and emergency fund. And if reelected, though, I plan to kind of have a theme of good enough is not enough, that perhaps it is time for us to look into our budget now that we've gotten in pretty good shape and start looking at what are the little things that could be done, you know, $10,000, $15,000 things, more trees, greener spaces, that type of thing within the city, that we spend a little bit of our surplus to go from 95% right to try to be 99% right. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, I mean, with just about under $8 million in reserves, 3.5 of that is currently allocated towards our PERS. It would be sensible, as their allocation model calls for ramp-ups, calls for additional funds that we need to fund that, to make sure that we are not going to get ourselves in hot water, to plan for our future accordingly and to have that. But part of the additional reserves and part of the additional, say, surplus on the budget, we need to make improvements for our future, improvements for the families, improvements to our park systems. You know, if you look at the equipment, I serve on the commission, we have some of these parks that, with equipment that's, I hate to say it, nearly as old as I am. And we can't have our families on that. So addressing some of the quality of life issues, to say, hey, look, we have your taxes for our citizens, and we are taxing you. They need to be able to see the return on their investment within our city. And that's what I plan to do.
Thank you. Okay, now we have a fairly long and detailed question, so if there are no objections, since we still have a lot of time, I would like to give the candidates 2 minutes to answer this question. Is there any objection to that?
None.
Any objection from the audience? Okay. All right, and we will begin with Mr. Murphy. The question is, please explain how contracts are awarded for city maintenance items, especially number 1, tree trimming, which seems to be done too often, and number 2, trash pickup. And do you approve of the current contracts?
The simple answer to the second one is yes. We do. We just extended the trash contract for 5 years. We have a great rate, and we unanimously approve that. I don't think that's really much of an issue. The tree trimming is done on a competitive bid, but also, it's done by the Parks Department. Can't think of the right name, but
Public Works.
Public Works, thank you. Done by Public Works, and I actually hear it's not done enough. So I guess it depends on each person's tree, and as I've been walking campaigning, there are certain sections of the areas where really we could cut down the trees a lot more, and we have some really ugly trees in parts of the town that drop a lot of yellow and purple flowers that I'm sure for those residents they'd like to see those trees go. And that's part of what I was talking about in my last answer, that we can go from the 95 to the 99% by addressing these issues and spending a little money on them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wilson?
I believe Mr. Murphy kind of explained the process of how we award the contracts. The trash contract was not put out for bid. It was renewed and kept in service, from what I understand, the second lowest rates for trash services within the county. Something we definitely can revisit as the contract does come up. I believe in a competitive process for that, and that the best overall candidate with the best value to our residents should be the ones who receive it. That's different from the tree trimming or any other service contract that we award. The value should be really borne back to the citizens of Los Alamitos who are paying for this. It's that simple. Tree trimming is an especially interesting area because they're going through my neighborhood and they're trimming all our trees. And I'm seeing notes posted on the trees next to the no parking sign to say, please don't cut it back too much. We love our trees in our neighborhood, because they were planted there back in the 60s. So as we do some of these items, it's important to remember that we get the community's buy-in. I didn't receive a notice that we were trimming trees in our neighborhood. I didn't hear any of our neighbors did. And the full and open disclosure for any kind of item that specifically affects their houses and their way of life and their property needs to be properly notified. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gross.
The tree trimming is done by an outside contract. It's competitively bid. All public works contracts are established by code. A living wage has to be included in it, so the contracts have to adhere to that. It's set up by the state in terms of those types of contracts, whether it's road, any public works contract has to be bid and has to be meet specific standards. We're using a company that has arborists on it. We had some problems, I believe 2 years ago over on Howard, where a number of the trees died and were falling, and branches were breaking and falling on cars, and the city wound up having to overspend our budget and go in and remove those trees because they were a greater hazard to public safety. It's tough when it comes to making decisions. I don't want my tree trimmed as much, or I want mine cut back more, because everybody has their own feelings from the standpoint of the trees. The city is open and willing to listen to anybody that has a concern or an issue. If they receive the notice, they should contact the Public Works Department with the city, community development, and voice their opinion. The trash contract is something that for many years was not bid out. This last go-round it was bid out, and it was for a 10-year term, renewable each 5 years. We just came up with that 5-year renewal. We actually received a great deal of additional services as part of that agreement, and as been referenced, we have the second lowest collection rate for residents in the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's go back to 1-minute answers. The next question, we'll begin with Mr. Wilson. The school district is the biggest government entity in this area. Sometimes they aren't the best neighbor. How can you improve this?
Well, I think it starts first with the board of directors and with the superintendent and having a good working relationship. I looked on the agenda for the standing committees and was a little dismayed to see that the last, I think, standing committee that they had for the school district and the city was in 2015. And I know there's been, the council members have relationships with school board members and they attend. But one of the things that I've personally done for myself is I've attended the Los Alamitos Unified School District Steering Committee. And it's a big open group, community stakeholders come, and we're able to share at least ideas and grasp where the district is going. So having those dialogues, attending meetings, having representatives from the city attend those, and keeping those is what's going to ultimately give us the best possible way to make sure there are issues, that we address them, and we get proper notice for the city and the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gross?
Thank you. School districts are a unique entity, a governmental entity. They're governed by the education code, and they're outside the purview of local government. They get to do what they want to do because they answer to a different drummer, essentially. We have had issues with our local school board, and we are partners with our local school board as it relates to use of elementary schools and high school fields, and it's important that we maintain good relationships. We do have a standing committee of 2 council members and 2 board members who meet with respective staffs of both the district and the city and address specific problems. Most recent one was on safe routes to school. And where other issues come up, we can create a different standing committee and work on those objectives as well. Good relationships with the elected bodies on both sides is very important.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy?
Thank you. It is truly amazing how little influence we have with the school district. I mean, they really, as Dean said, do what they want. They're under a different set of rules. That's what makes it important, though, that we have a seat at the table with them and constant communication. We do work with them, such on traffic flow at the high school. We're going to spend a lot of money to try and improve that, to at least get the lights better, so have some double left turn lanes, things like that. But many of the items that the school board does, they do without having to tell us, and they can strictly do it by themselves. So the communication at least gives us a chance to complain when our citizens are affected. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That is the end of our questions, unless someone has any last-minute questions that they would like to submit on the card. Okay, well then we will wrap it up with the closing statements, and we will begin in reverse order with Mr. Wilson.
So I want to say thank you for everybody for attending. This debate's good. It's one of these things where you look up and you say, you have two incumbents on here and you have somebody that hasn't never ran for office before. Say, why would you challenge these two people? Because this forum is great. I get to meet people and talk about city, and it's the first time in 4 years that we've had this. It's a great, healthy discussion. It's great to get the issues out. I'm going to leave just one item, and this is kind of why I'm running. It's family values, but it's really epitomized as actually helping people. I was able to start Winter Wonderland over 5 years ago, our 5th year, and we had a story come up of a single mom with 2 children who said, "This is the first time my kids have ever seen snow. I can't take them to go see. I can't afford it, but thank you for bringing us on." We as a city did that. We as a community did that. And I am happy to help out. I want to help out, and helping out people and being a part of the community is why I'm doing this. And I am asking for your vote. You have 2 votes. I'm asking for 1 of them. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy?
Thank you. 4 years ago, I ran thinking I could help with the budget, knowing that's my background. But I was truly surprised how much I love this job. The ability to help people, at least direct them to the people within the city who can actually get something done for them, really is good. And when I put the suit on and the nameplate and get to go represent this city on the various boards we all serve on, it's pretty nice that people, when you go out there, people know Los Alamitos is a great community. That everybody has the highest regard for this city, all within the county that we deal with. We don't really have a lot of problems that a lot of other places have due to the constant vigilance of our citizens. And that's one of our most important things, is the activity level of our citizens in giving us ideas, complaining at the proper time, pushing us to do things that they feel is beneficial. The more eyes and ears helping us out, the better off we are. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gross?
Thank you very much. I'm blessed to be able to represent the citizens of Los Alamitos and work on their behalf. I have my phone numbers published. I'm very accessible and willing to talk to anyone about any issue and help them resolve whatever problem and issue they have. Like the mayor, I enjoy this opportunity. I put in a lot of additional hours in community type work, and I do it willingly because I think it's part of the job and part of being prepared when we meet on a monthly basis. We've established a good working relationship as a council, unlike we used to have 6, 7, 8 years ago where there was a lot of turmoil. The continuity and the ability to work together is beneficial for the city, beneficial for the citizens and the staff. That continuity needs to continue, and I would appreciate your vote and re-electing me on November the 8th. Thanks to the League of Women Voters for putting this on. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that ends the forum for this evening. Thank you very much to the candidates for coming this evening to present your viewpoints on the issues. Thank you very much for the citizens who came here to become informed voters, and wish you the best.
Thank you.